Okay, thank you so much for joining our panel discussion. We have a panel moderator and panelists joined here this evening. But before starting, I'd like to share something. So we have Rebecca over here, and she's been a mentor for the TMI Hub team for our capstone project. And I would like to thank you so much for always helping us through this entire project from day one. Thank you so much. And she's been a great mentor. Thank you. Would you like to say?
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming. So yeah, my official role is Industry Partnerships Manager for the TMI department. But yes, I've also been working with this wonderful team this semester on getting this event together. And they've been such a pleasure to work with. So I just want to thank the students for getting this all together. And I also want to thank our panelists for joining us this evening. We're very excited to have you. This is our first ever pop-up event, as you can see on the screen. And we're really excited to hopefully have this be the first of many in-person events among our capstone students. So this TMI Hub group is from the Management of Technology capstone course. We have all of our Management of Technology students complete the capstone just prior to graduating. This particular project, our department was the sponsor, but for many of our projects, we have industry partners come and sponsor the projects. So we'll have groups of students working in teams on a real world business problem for their final project. We find these to be really valuable for students and our project sponsors to be able to work together on these projects. So if that sounds like something that interests you and you would love to work with one of our teams, please feel free to connect with me and I'd love to share a little bit more about the MOT capstone. And thank you again to our panelists.
And also to mention, we have Lauren over here present from Disruptive Technologies. She is also one of our industry partners for one of our capstone projects. Just wanted to share that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Jay. Before we get the panel discussion started, I just wanted to introduce our moderator for the panel. It's Ramona Wright. Hi. So, a social entrepreneur and a former tech, Ramona has been a President Lifetime Volunteer Service Award honoree, the highest civil award bestowed by the President of the United States in recognition of volunteerism. So, can we have a huge round of applause for that? She's a TEDx speaker, author, high performance coach, and a band strategist who's managed multi-million dollars marketing budgets and worked with Brookfield Properties, Georgetown University, Qatar Foundation International, Reebok, Sony Music Latin. She's published in the book Going Supernova, The Bold Paths of 101 Superachievers, including Guy Kawasaki, former chief evangelist of Apple. She has spoken around the world at events presented at Cornell University, Google, Hollyhocks Social Venture Institute, Leadership, Microsoft, and the University of Ghana. Can we have a huge round of applause for that?
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. And thank you all for coming closer. Tonight, we're going to be talking about tech, but also inclusion. And so many of us work with data, numbers, computers, but we're also talking about humanity, working with people. And so by us coming together, we're actually more inclusive because that is a part of creating community in the workplace. Can you all hear me okay? Fantastic. Before I introduce our amazing panel members, I'd like to take this time to thank Professor Jabril Benzadrine, the TMI Hub Tech Lab students. I think we should give them a round of applause. You guys have done a fabulous job. Lauren Keeson, I am a board member for Disruptive Technologists, so really excited about the support that the students have been providing DT. And also all of you, you could be spending your evening doing a lot of other things, but thank you so much for investing in the future of tech. I'm really excited about this because early on, probably back in 2007, 2011, I was somewhat of an early pioneer teaching social media marketing at Loyola Marymount University, and turned my classroom into an agency. And I know the power of giving students hands-on experience. Actually, LinkedIn was actually one of our first case studies, and most people were not familiar with how to use LinkedIn. So I'm really excited about this pop-up, and I know that you all are going to really benefit from it. I want to talk a little bit about how this panel is going to go. So we're going to be talking to this amazing group of panel members. They're going to share a little bit about their practices as it relates to best practices, as it relates to technology development, and hopefully inspire us to think more responsibly when it comes to ethical development, when it comes to technology in the service of more inclusive workspaces and educational environments. We're going to talk for about maybe 30 to 45 minutes. We'd love to open it up afterwards and have an engaging conversation with some of you. So hopefully you'll have some great questions for each of us. The initial questions that I'm going to ask our panel members will be more experiential. They're going to share some stories about what they've done in the workplace. And then the latter half, we're going to give some practical tools and tips that hopefully everyone can apply. And as I introduce each panel member, I'm going to introduce you, I'm going to sort of popcorn around. I'm going to introduce you by name and title. And then I'd like you to do a little self-introduction. But as you do a self-introduction, you have to start off with where you're from, and it can be where you live right now, where you were born, wherever, and you have to share a favorite food. And I do this whenever I can because I'm a foodie, but I also think it gives us insight into each other, right? So many times when we think about inclusion, we think about including people who are different than us. We don't realize that we actually share more in common than we think. So I'll just give an example. You all know me by now, Ramona Wright, born in Washington, D.C., raised in LA, or Southern California. And I love pizza. I like to say if I was stranded on a deserted island, if I could only have one meal, pizza would be it. So I'm going to, actually, Jeff, you're right next to me. So I'm going to start with you. You're the CEO and founder of ZeoTag, Jeffrey Paul. If you wouldn't mind sharing where you're from, favorite food, and just share a brief background. I think we all had a chance to see your presentation, but just a brief background of what you do.
Sure. Thanks very much. I'm Jeff Paul. I'm a New Yorker through and through, born on Long Island, proud graduate of the SUNY system, SUNY Binghamton. Out of it, my entire career was based primarily in Manhattan. I was very privileged in that I found an enterprise software company that I hooked up with in the mid 80s, and I had a great ride there. And I've always been in enterprise B2B software. Now, my favorite food, that's hard because there's very little food I don't like. But I would say probably a good curry, a good chicken curry will always do it for me.
That's what I had for lunch today. So something we have in common already. Next, we have Badrul Hussain, CEO of Infolytics. If you would share a little bit about your background, but before you do, favorite food and where you're from.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me all right? No. How about now? Okay, great. Okay, I was born in Washington, D.C., but my parents were with the Foreign Service, so I moved around a lot. But I went to college here in New York and has considered New York home ever since. I've been in various places. My work has taken me in Asia a lot, but also here in the US. I used to do public sector work, so I've been to a lot of state capitals. And for favorite foods, in North Dakota, they offered me, bison meat. So, there's all there's all kinds of, but my favorite is probably biryani, which is, I think many of you are familiar with. And that's it, right?
That's fantastic. Yeah, another DC native. I don't meet too many people born in DC.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah.
that's fantastic. Next, we have Dr. Ryan Letts, and Dr. Ryan is joining, Dr. Ryan Letts is joining us online. Can you hear us, Dr. Letts?
Yes, I can.
And am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You did.
Fantastic. And if you would share a little bit about yourself, starting with where you're from, favorite food, and a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Dr. Ryan Letts. I was actually born on the island of Jamaica. Migrated here at a very young age. My favorite food happens to be pizza, just like you, Ramona. So I see that I'm in good company. I'm also a U.S. military veteran and the president of Cleon Corp, we do research and development.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I have some Caribbean roots. My dad's family is from St. Anne's Parish. So
Awesome.
Connections with everybody so far. Let's see if we can keep it going. Thank you, Dr. Letts. Next, we have Stephanie Park, Director of Business Development for NeuroMeca. Am I saying that correctly?
NeuroMeca.
NeuroMeca. Thank you.
So I'm Stephanie. I am from Austin, Texas. I don't know if anyone, Texas? Oh, really? Got it. Yeah, not too many Texans in New York, I will say. Favorite food. So I am Korean American. So I love Korean food. They have the best street food. So if anyone that has had like a spicy rice cakes, one of my favorites. Yeah. A little bit about me. So NeuroMeca is originally a Korean company, and they found a ton of success in Korea. And so this year we're really focusing on expanding into new markets. So that's sort of my role currently as the Director of Business Development, is to sort of thoughtfully think about how we can use technology that's we found to be extremely helpful in Korea, and how to sort of expand it into these new markets that there are some similarities across markets, but there are obviously differences as well across various work cultures and different industries as well. So that's sort of been my project this year, is really thinking through how we can be successful in new markets.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Next, we have Joshua Ness. And Josh, I don't know if you go by Joshua or Josh.
My friends call me Josh.
Josh, may I?
Yes.
Okay. And you're the Director of Startup Grind and also a Fulbright Specialist with the U.S. Department of State. Congrats on that.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. How you doing?
Good.
Good. All right. Thanks for being here. I like that you said you could be doing anything tonight. It always is tough to be up here knowing that we're competing with all of New York City. You could be doing literally anything. But we're very grateful that you're here, and I'm happy to be here. I am Josh. I am also from Texas. I'm from the Dallas area. Any Cowboys fans in here? None? Tell you what. Any Philadelphia fans in here? Oh, stop. I moved to New York in 2012 and have been here ever since. I live in Brooklyn. And in addition to being the director of the New York chapter of Startup Grind and a Fulbright specialist with the Department of State, I spent 6 years at Verizon's 5G Labs group. If any of you have done a lot of work with Professor Jabril, you might have seen me before. I've mentored a couple of capstones. I've given a couple of talks. Our job there at the lab essentially was to predict the future. What are all the different ways that advanced connectivity and advanced cloud computing is going to impact technology development? And so we did that by initially throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And then as these things became more commercialized, we started working with specific sectors and specific technology verticals to create solutions and put them into market and test them. And so one of the last things that we did before I departed in May this year was spent the past few years working on social impact accelerators. And so a little bit of relevance to what we're going to be talking about here today. One specifically was around disability technology, and so that area of tech development is pretty important to me. And so I'm very happy to be here talking about this. Favorite foods coming from Texas, it's hard not to say nachos. A good like trash can plate of nachos, not the little like individual chips that have like little things on them. No, you can keep it. I don't want it. My office these days is right near Koreatown. And so I have been really diving into a lot of the cuisine that's there in K-Town. If anybody has not been up there, I highly recommend. Some really good places to go. The one thing that I won't eat, the one thing is okra that has been steamed or boiled. because then it's just a pot, just, you know what, I'm not even going to talk about it. So yeah, curious if anybody else has an aversion to soft, flimsy okra. I know.
One, well, and I think you guys had another common connection, so I think there's something there. Well, thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Tuba, and is it Nazaruddin?
Yes.
Very good to meet you. Thank you for being here. And you are the Senior Technical Product Leader at Amazon. Same questions for you, and also share with us what you do at Amazon.
Sure, thank you. A little bit about me. I was actually a former student at NYU. I was Professor Jibril's student. So it humbles me to come full circle over here because 8 years ago, I was a student sitting exactly where a lot of people are. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm originally from India, from Bombay. I've spent about 8 years in New York, and I'm very grateful to call New York home. I do travel a lot for my work. I was in public sector consulting myself, so I've visited every capital too, so I get that. And even for my job at Amazon, I travel a lot. So favorite food I would say is truffle fries. I don't know, I have an inkling for carbs. So, and in terms of what I do at Amazon, I started off my career in Amazon at AWS, building several products in the generative AI and NLP space, building workforce planning products, building products in the talent intelligence space. And now I lead a generative AI-based product team in Amazon for the last mile delivery logistics space. And prior to that, I've worked in consulting at PwC. I worked in the mayor's office and have done several independent contracting work while during my time at NYU.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think that, well, let's give all of our panelists a round of applause before we continue. So I think we all can see that you all have come from very diverse backgrounds, have a lot of experiences, not just in the tech space. And because we're going to be talking about inclusion, I thought it would be great to just level set with a definition. So most of us, well, many layman people would Google what inclusion means. And there's a lot of talk about D&I, inclusion in the workplace. But number one, it's a noun, and it's the action or state of including or of being included within a group or structure. It's also the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources to people whom otherwise may have been excluded or may be excluded or marginalized. And I think that sometimes when we think of inclusion, we think of ethnicity and gender, but a lot of times we don't think about physical or intellectual disabilities and members of certain communities that when we look around, we have to ask ourselves, who's missing from the conversation? And so I want to plant that seed in all of your minds. If anyone has seen, you might consider it an old school film now at this point, but a film Inception. And it's the ability to sort of plant a seed in someone's mind or an idea. And so I want you to think about, as you're thinking about our conversations, who's not here right now? Who should be in this conversation, right? And that is our objective as we think about the work that we're doing. A lot of what we're going to be talking about is also going to be potentially creating a social impact. And that can be defined as the effect on people and communities that happen as a result of an action or inaction, an activity, project, program, or policy. So we're going to jump right in. And again, I'm going to throw out some questions, and whomever wants to ask, feel free, don't be shy to grab the mic. I just ask that you keep your responses to about a minute or two. We want to try to get through as many questions as we can and then open it up to all of you to have a conversation. So I'd love for you all to talk about sort of create a day in the life, if you will, what your day looks like as it relates to your tech product development or maybe product management, just to sort of level set things for the students and other attendees to get perspective of your day in the life.
I can start because I do work with a lot of product managers and engineers. So I'll break it out into like 3 buckets. One is the customer side of things. The other is the engineering side of things. And the other is the programmatic side of things. So at Amazon, we operate with a concept called leadership principles. If anyone has read the book, The Everything Store, it does outline all these leadership principles, and it's all public information. But customer obsession is like one of the leadership principles that we focus on. And for every product that we build, we keep the customer at the forefront and work backwards from it. So part of my day goes in talking to customers, prioritizing requests, basically understanding what problems to solve for, and validating the products that we're building for. Are they focusing on the right problems or not? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to change strategy or not? So that's the customer side of things. From an engineering side of things, part of product management is important to remember that it's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. And you might have the best vision and the best strategy, but if you're not collaborating with your engineers, the engineers are the rock stars who actually build your product out, help you realize the vision. You're not doing a good job if you're not including them or being inclusive. So translating your vision to the engineers, making sure my engineers' voices are heard. They have a say in development, in risks, in important considerations. That's another part of my role. And then the last thing, from a programmatic aspect, it is making sure that everybody who's working on the product is aligned. That could be through sending status reports, or agile huddles, or daily cadences. So yeah, I don't know if that quite answers your question.
No, that's great. That's great. Anyone else might want to share?
Well, mine's less on the product side, but more on, because we're a services company and we do some product as well. But to the point of inclusion and diversity, I think it's really important for actionable things to be instituted in the companies, because everyone can say a lot of good intent. But what we found most effective is actually measure it. So if you don't measure it, you don't really get anything. So we make it a part. For instance, if we want to see certain types of behaviors like mentorship, right, a very key element, we make that part of our annual evaluation process. So how many people did you mentor? And we don't. It's not about a numbers thing. It's more about seeing the quality of the mentorship. You don't want to make it a bullet point type of thing that people are just checking off. And you want to lead by example. So the management has to not just say these things or just include it in the HR's, annual performance eval, but actually, live through that and show that, that you are serious.
I appreciate that. Have you yourself benefited from mentorship, or some of the things that your company has put into place? Do you have maybe any experiential stories for yourself personally?
Yes, having started my career here, I have benefited from really good mentors. And I wanted to instill that in the company that I formed. But the company is in a different social construct than here. My company is in Bangladesh, and while all the terms apply, but it's different people, different kinds of distinctions are made. But we have what is white privilege here. We have Muslim Bengali privilege. And so we have to actively root that out. Otherwise, we don't get the best people. Some of our best engineers are people from lower socioeconomic classes who in other companies are not given a good look. But because I started my career here, I have no tolerance for that. So in our company, we have all kinds of people that you wouldn't normally see because they would be overlooked. They would be, marginalized. So yes, I've tried to put that into place. So we actually we're very proud of the talent we have, and we have one of the lowest turnover, or because of that, because people are pretty. They see it. They want to stay. So it works.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that, we really underestimate the power of mentorship. How many people, by a show of hands, have had a mentor or potentially are seeking a mentor? Fantastic. Pretty much everyone, right? How many people are mentors? Wonderful. I would encourage you, if you don't have a mentor, for some of the people who raise their hands, who are mentors, maybe connect with them. Oftentimes, I think one of the things I would always encourage my students is really tap into the power of mentorship. If there is someone doing something that you want to learn, or working in an industry that you want to gain more experience in, don't be shy to send them a DM, reach out to them. You'd be really surprised how many people want to support and mentor. And I think within companies, one of the things that we were going to talk about a little later, but I think, we can sort of bring it into the conversation now since you talked about a day in the life of what you're doing to make your workspace more inclusive is, that is an action step, right? That is something that's really tangible to ensure that there is not just opportunities for retention, but opportunities for growth within a company as well. So that's fantastic. I'd love to maybe ask some of you, what are some best practices that you can talk about broadly or specifically as it relates to ethical, inclusive, whether if it's based on ethics or responsible development, that you can speak to that maybe was something you learned the hard way, or something that you feel like is a cautionary tale in your career as you've gone on, or something that you've witnessed, even if it's not something personal.
Yeah, hi, I can speak to that firsthand. First of all, I want to tell everybody in the audience that my company is 4 years old, and it really leveraged the power of the network and groups like this, got us where we are. And I want to give a shout out to Lauren and the Disruptive Technologist group. Via her network, we got mentors, we got development, we got much needed investment from there. And I would say that we skipped to the head of the line because we met these people through groups like this. So I would encourage you, as a young professional, to invest the time in groups like this from there. Having said that, ethical development is really, really important. And I will tell you that I had the vision of what Zeotech could be because I had built a company prior to that manually built tables of contents. And we sold that off, and that was all good. And then I followed generative AI and AI available as a service, and great people like Amazon and the other G1 was made available. I didn't know anybody from Amazon, so we built it on Google Cloud from there. But picking the right partners and picking the right employees to work with is really important. We're actually on our third CTO. It took me the first two to figure out they couldn't do what they said they could do. And then I had to always prospecting. And I finally found it out in Gonzaga University, a machine learning professor out there could do what we needed to do. And 4 months after he joined, his architecture and the direction with our engineers, boom, it worked. And every morning I would get up at 6:30 and I'd try it. And I can still remember it was July 20th, 2021. It worked. It's also the anniversary of us landing on the moon, July 20th. So, but the first two CTOs couldn't get it done, and I had to make the change. And one of them turned out to be significantly ethically challenged and caused me a lot of heartache afterwards. We're past that. Having the perseverance to get through it is important. You just got to keep your eye on the prize. So hopefully that's helpful.
That's great. And thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that, Jeff, you've been very vulnerable, and hopefully some of our other panelists, if you don't have stories of your own, other things that you've witnessed or experienced. I know some of you are working in robotics and AI, and some of you may have just had hiccups or challenges. And I think sometimes we don't always talk about how do we overcome and move through those challenges. So many times you'll see on talk shows, you'll hear someone's meteoric rise to success. and they skip over all the hard stuff. And so we'd love for you all just to sort of peel back the curtain, give us a little glimpse of some of the hard stuff, whether it's an ethical situation or a dilemma, or just a business case that you think that you're really proud of that you were able to move through and overcome, or maybe that you even like to maybe crowdsource some wisdom from this very smart group. Anyone?
I can talk to maybe an ethical dilemma that I think a lot of people in the robotics space have to think about a lot, which is this idea of robots replacing humans, and how can we best sort of ensure that the way that we develop our robots are in a way that ideally improves people's lives rather than taking away from people's lives. I think one of the things at Neuromecha that we've done really well, and I'll be honest, it's partially from an ethical perspective, but part of it is just from a business case perspective, is when we try to create systems like robotic systems that truly enhance not just the boss's life, not just cost savings and cost cuts, but also the employees' lives, and truly makes their jobs better. There's a lot less pushback and a lot more just openness to adopting this technology. And a lot of automation is very new to people. It's very scary to people. So the more that we can focus on how can we make employees' lives better, the better business case there is for it. So, in the presentation, we mentioned automating the frying, sort of deep frying process. That's something that gets a lot of buy-in, not just from the restaurant manager or operator, but also employees who really don't want to do that work. And so that was like a really great way for us to align sort of what we want to do with automation with sort of the employees as well. And that's sort of one of the systems that we've really wanted to push into the US because there is that alignment. Versus, I mean, I'll be honest, there are systems that we've created that people aren't interested in because they're like, a person can do this and I don't want to replace workers with this task. And we kind of have to be mindful of that as we develop all the systems. And fortunately enough, the systems that have sort of been the most successful are the ones that we feel like really improve people's lives. And so it's something that is always in the back of my mind for sure, though. And we sort of have to think through the best way to sort of develop and grow this technology in an ethical manner.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think you raised some really good points there, Stephanie. When we were working with 5G and edge computing for the purposes of smart manufacturing and automation, as we were rolling that out to some of our customers, our major enterprise customers, they said some of the same things to us about how even manufacturing stuff that sometimes literally is plug in and turn, there's nuance to it, and it's not just something that gets replaced with a robotic system right away, especially when you have the person who has been doing it for X number of years who is the de facto expert in how that works. And so we then went back to the drawing board and started to create some systems that took into account those workers and weren't actively trying to displace those workers, but have them be able to be trained on how to do their job a little bit differently. And so not necessarily getting rid of them or completely relocating them, but allowing them to become the expert that actually then oversaw those processes and systems. And so it's not necessarily just about the cost saving of eliminating workers, but about retooling and retraining so that the plant can be more efficient and that worker can have a hand in the success of everything that everything that's happening. And then to speak on the ethical side of the story, the lived stories, we ran these skunkworks dev teams, right? And so we would hire in these very small agile teams, and we were really careful about the diversity and the inclusion of everything from cultural background to gender breakdown to the skills they were bringing to the table. And we told them to obey the startup mantra, right? Go fast and break things. And so they did, and they built some really cool things. And then our accessibility team within Verizon, they knocked on the door and they said, is this product that you're trying to commercialize, is it accessible? And we were like, what does that mean? And so they were like, they gave us a crash course on building products with inclusion in mind and accessibility in mind. And we were like, we'll just go back and change that later. And they were like, that's not how that works. And so what we found was they were absolutely right. And for lots of companies who are building large scalable products that are not building with inclusion and accessibility in mind from the very beginning, it is so expensive to go back and fix it. And your legal team and your accessibility team will mandate that you do this, or they will shut you down. And they have the authority to do that in most cases, because the exposure to lawsuits is increasing all the time for products that are not inclusive, that do not incorporate inclusivity and accessibility. And so as you're going into these into your roles in the future, and as you're progressing through your career, be sure to be asking that question about, are we building with accessibility and inclusivity in mind? Because if you're not, you're really opening yourself up to some risk there. And it's so much easier just to do that from the very beginning. Maybe move a tiny bit slower and make sure that everyone, all of your customers can use that product rather than have to go back and fix it at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I think when we think about the accessibility community, it's a community that we all could join at any minute, right? Whether we age into it, whether we unfortunately have an accident, whether we're born into it, right? It doesn't matter where we're from, how old we are, what we look like, our socioeconomic status. I think that one of those things that we often don't think about, right? That we all have varying privileges of ability. And so I think that that's a wonderful reminder that as you all are going out in the world and in the workspace, thinking about a community that we unfortunately could join, and how can we make those folks' lives easier. I want to make sure that we're also including Dr. Letts, who is joining us virtually. And Dr. Letts, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation specifically about a cautionary tale or experiences that you have that you think can be practical for everyone to take away. I also, if not, have a question around data and analytics as well, but wanted to see if there's anything that you wanted to add to this current conversation.
Yeah, so the panel feedback has been fantastic so far. And as someone who represents a minority group, coming from the island of Jamaica, working with a co-founder who's from China, right? And being a military veteran, there's so many layers to that, right? And part of my experience, I used to, prior to starting the company, I used to work at an organization called the Small Business Development Center, which is about 4 blocks from where you are sitting right now. And I used to work with the S&T advisors from the Pentagon to help source new technologies. And these folks, they are very security conscious in terms of the folks that they work with and doing background checks and things of that nature. And some things simply don't translate very well into military systems. Coming from the military myself, I understand how rigid things need to be. But then when we talk about academia and developing technology, especially being agile and fast, a lot of things get, I would say, caution gets thrown to the wind in the pursuit of actually achieving a goal and an MVP. So when you come from a background like that, you tend to fall into a lot of different categories and different buckets. And you see things from many perspectives where a lot of folks don't necessarily understand that on its face, right? Our technology is actually in the clean tech space. And when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we understand that energy is something that everyone needs. In the United States, however, a lot of minority communities are the ones that suffer the negative impacts of energy and clean energy specifically, right? Because a lot of the infrastructure that are being built, they get built in these neighborhoods that folks don't have a lot of representation in politics and in government. And so therefore, they actually end up feeling the brunt of these progressive ideas that we tend to champion. And so therefore, having the unique perspective that I do, I would love to summarize all of this. I could talk for hours about all of the challenges, but in the interest of time, I would love to say that essentially, when it comes to our boardroom and the way we practice it, and I know that Tuba mentioned at Amazon, who happens to be a very large company that has the resources to concentrate on certain areas. When you're a small company and you're developing, you're wearing many hats, and sometimes things tend to get overlooked, right? So when it comes to mentorship, one of the things I've actually actively done is always seek out mentorships. And in groups like this, that's how we're able to find some of our advisors, folks to help us from a legal perspective, looking at things from a development perspective. And therefore, it helps us to stay grounded, even though we're trying to move very fast. But from a diversity perspective, we understand that we have that on our team. So we consciously make an effort to make sure that we're hearing everyone's input before we actually make a move. And I think that's one of our blessings, but it's also a curse because we would love to move a lot faster sometimes. However, when we have a small team that needs to remain agile and move at this pace of business, sometimes things do get overlooked. But the fact that we can rest assured in the experience of the team, that helps us to keep our guardrails up.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I think that, you talked about, you're in Jamaica, you have a business partner from China, being a veteran, and thank you for your service. I think sometimes we often forget about our veterans and so many folks coming back into the workforce, many of whom haven't maybe worked in traditional work, quote unquote, what is a traditional work environment. And so I think that's something that one of our companies, one of the companies I own is Right One Media Group. And we intentionally hired a veteran and provided mentorship training for him. We also discovered that he had some mental health challenges and wanted to make sure that we had support systems within our company that could support him as well. And so I think when we think about inclusion, as we can see, this conversation is really expansive because we all are different and we all have very unique needs. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Dr. Letts. I know that thanks. I know that we are starting to wind down and want to open up some time, have some time for Q&A. I think what I'd love to do is maybe, I always think with these types of conversations, I miss teaching. And I always would ask myself, if I could do it all over again and I were a student, what were the things that I wish I knew then that I know now? And so before we open it up to some Q&A from the audience, there's two questions I want to ask you all to just sort of from the end all the way up to answer. As we were thinking about artificial intelligence, obviously there was big conversation with OpenAI, but I'd love you all to maybe just throw out one anecdote or something that you think about as a trend that you foresee at the intersection of technology and workplace inclusion that organizations can prepare for. So if you have a prediction or a trend or a recommendation or something that you think is a takeaway that you want people to consider implementing, that's one. And or you can share one piece of advice that you wish you knew when you were a student, right? That could help maybe someone in this audience leapfrog, in their career or personal life. And so we'll start at the end.
When I was a student, I wish that I was taking more advantage of this kind of thing. I would prioritize my studies. I would like, oh, I can't do this because I have to have a midterm or something or a paper. The access you get here, you sort of take for granted. And then suddenly when you're out of the university, it's a lot harder. You have to actually engineer it, right? You have to actually make the meetings happen. You get a lot of access that I would, really leverage and use here at a university setting. And as far as our AI and where it's all going, stay tuned. It's only the beginning. There's a lot coming. If any of you saw the Times article over the weekend, just begins this, how the story begins of what's happening. I think, you know, and as far as students, I think focusing on your basic studies is probably the best way. There's no one thing you can study and sort of be prepared. Just know how to read, write, and add and subtract. I think that's it. That's
Thank
what I
you.
tell my kids.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good advice. I'll piggyback off of that. In addition to seeking out events like this that are happening within the school, there is a whole big giant city out there of people who are professionals in every single field and space you can imagine, from technology to anything you can think of. And so, as a person who has been running events here in the city for more than a decade, I can tell you that there are tons and tons of events outside campus that you can go to, where you can start hearing talks like this, or founder talks, or technologist talks, or experts in their fields who are actually sharing this this advice. And usually there's food and drinks, and it's usually free. And it's a great way to get out there and build, in addition to the skills that that he was talking about, building some of those soft skills. What is it like to approach a group of people, stick your hand out, shake, and say, "Hey, I'm new here. It's my first time," and actually getting to know some of those people. So getting out there in those environments, practicing what it's like to be in a networking scenario. I know some people like recoil when someone talks about a networking event, but they're actually really effective. And the more effective that you can be in them, then the more it'll serve you in your career. And then you'll also pick up some knowledge from the speakers, and maybe even pick up a mentor or something. Like he was saying, that people love to give back. They love to mentor, especially university students, because for one, it makes them feel good, but they also know that they are impacting the further development of their field, right?
Yeah.
And so definitely, I can share some resources with that too. I'll send them to Professor Jabril, and I personally run a few series that you're welcome to come and attend. The part about technology, I'll go and talk about interface design. Everyone thought that VR was going to take over the world, especially when Meta bought Quest, who made Quest first? Oculus, that's right. No one even remembers that anymore. When Meta bought Oculus, and so the idea that we had on the connectivity side was that we were going to push new types of interfaces into enterprise, and then enterprise that would bleed over into people's personal lives, and they would want that on the personal side. Turns out that's completely backwards, and people are still using Zoom all day long. No one's going into VR to host their meetings. There have been extensive experiments with this that really have not ever got off the ground. And so I think that until we start seeing a consumer revolution in new interface design, and the new Vision Pro might have something to do with it, the new Quest 3 might have something to do with it, we'll see. Magic Leap is still out there. And then Snap has been actually working on this a lot longer than most people, so don't sleep on Snap.
Yeah.
When consumers begin using some of this technology, then it'll begin bleeding into the workforce. And I think we'll start to see us getting away from these, brick phones that we have.
That's great. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll speak a little bit about what I wish I knew when I was a student. So a little bit about my background. My parents are immigrants. I moved to the US when I was 3. And so I think oftentimes with immigrant backgrounds, there's this laser focus on structure, on security, on making sure that you sort of know what your path is before you actually go through the path. And so I think for most of my life, I sort of confined myself to that. So whether that's, become a lawyer, become a doctor, engineer, something that has that security. And I think I sort of passed on a lot of opportunities initially because of that sort of mindset of wanting security more so than wanting growth and learning. I have now worked at a handful of different startups, and what you learn is no one knows what they're doing. And this idea that, oh, I can't do X, Y, or Z because I don't know enough, because I'm not ready, and you never feel like an adult. So I think that sort of held me back in a lot of ways in terms of my personal and professional growth. And the first startup I joined, I was surrounded by very, very young people, and no one knew what they were doing. We were just, yeah, it's like, I can't remember who said, you just throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And once I learned that, a lot of my imposter syndrome went away, because once you realize no one knows what they're doing, then maybe it's okay that I try for opportunities where I don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm glad I learned it now, and it's still a process. Like, there are so many times that, I'm honest, even this panel, I was like, who am I to talk about my experiences? And I think every time you do put yourself in those positions, you always sort of walk away learning more about yourself and the people around you. So yeah, I wish I knew that as a student as well.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Tuba?
Amazing. I'm going to piggyback on the same vein that Stephanie said, that one thing I knew if I was a student, when I was a student, is take more risks. I think, and because I also went to NYU, the advantage that we have is you have access to so much, from the makerspace to the Leslie E Lab to the Entrepreneurship Institute. So if I could go back in time, I am dedicating time towards a startup idea in my free time. I would do it as a student, validate, and move on. Probably have more startups now. So that's one. And then about the trend in AI, and this is going to come as a surprise for someone who's led several AI product teams and is leading a generative AI practice. And again, don't quote me on this, but generative AI is one tool to augment the way we perform. AI, machine learning based tools have been there for a long time. The way the models have progressed has definitely changed. When I started at AWS, we built a model using Kendra and Lex and tuned it over a year to predict certain outcomes. And now with Titan and Bedrock and large language models, the lead time is reduced so much. But having said that, it's not going to replace a human. You still need people to figure out what data sources to ingest, how to operationalize the model, how to use the model. So what might change is focus on the skill sets to learn. Like 5 years ago, everybody wanted to go and get a computer science degree because software development engineers were getting paid a lot of money, right? Now with all these tools available, you don't need to learn how to code everything. It's like you should know a certain amount of information about systems, but these tools can help you think with code and a lot of things. So I guess the point is that all the fear that I think, Stephanie, you mentioned as well about jobs getting automated, jobs getting lost, that's just one part of the equation. I think if you focus on the right skill sets to build, in terms of like both a balance of technical, business, and problem solving, you're set up for success, because you'll always need people to operationalize these models. And at the end of the day, these large language models are a product of a human mind.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Letts?
Yeah. So one of the things that I didn't realize until after I graduated was the power of my student ID and how many folks were so willing to help. After you leave out of academia, folks aren't as generous with their time. So I concur with everyone here on the panel that you should certainly leverage that while you're in school. The fact that you have the ability to access these world-class professors and their networks, right? You should certainly take advantage of that to set yourself up, especially if you're going into the workspace, right? Look at their LinkedIn profiles, see who they know, folks who you want to actually connect with outside of academia, and that will set you up. In terms of AI, how our team has used AI is to help us with the research. And we see that as a tool in our toolkit to actually leverage to cut down on the amount of time that it takes and hours that it takes for us to do research. So from an operational perspective, it gives us much more leverage and operating power to know that we can reach more customers, do more customer research, do our supply chain research. So that's the value that we see in AI. And this is only the beginning. It's going to get better. So I look forward to that. And I don't see it actually replacing the human person at any time. There's certain tedious tasks that if we can get rid of that and keep focus on the creative aspects, I think folks will be a lot more engaged and a lot more productive.
Yes, I agree. That's fantastic. Last but not least, Jeff.
Sure, I'll be brief. I will tell you, make sure to extend yourself. If you're not failing at something, you're not doing enough. One of my mentors, her tagline at the end of her emails is continue to make mistakes. Because if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing enough. Do not be afraid of failing, because it's okay. Because every time you fail, you learn something. And I would say, make the most of your network. People want to help you. Reach out to them, reach out beyond yourself. Certainly, I'm sure everybody here has very good technical capabilities, and that's good. That's going to get you in the game. But it's really building the relationships and maintaining them. Sometimes it's not convenient to fulfill an obligation, but make sure that you fulfill it and you get a good reputation. Thanks.
That's fantastic. And I'll share two quick things. I concur with what several people have said about saying yes, basically. There was a movie with, I think it was called Yes Man. Jim Carrey, right? He said yes to everything. And I made that decision when I got out of college that I would say yes to everything. And my career has taken me so many places. And from an inclusion standpoint, saying yes to be the founding CEO of a tech startup in Amsterdam when I'm a non-technical person. I'm probably the least technical person in this room. And I was so intimidated that I wouldn't be able to handle it. Being a non-technical person, being a woman, being a person of color. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Being a CEO is about leadership and service, serving others and serving my team and making sure that the company has what it needs to succeed. And that's the last thing I'll leave you with. My greatest opportunities have come to me and accolades not because of my education or what I've achieved in the workplace, but because of serving others. And so that's one last thing I'd invite you all to think about is what can you do to serve someone else, someone who is not like you? How can you be an advocate for inclusion, whatever that means to you, right? How can you bring someone along to take advantage of some of the opportunities maybe that you have? With that being said, I'd love for us to give all of our panel members a round of applause, and thank you for your time. You guys were great. I think we maybe have time for one or two questions, really, really quick. If there's anyone who has one or two questions, I know there's going to be some networking afterwards, but if there's one or two questions.
While he's doing that, I do want to thank Professor Jabril and also Jay for helping to organize
Yes,
this whole thing. So
absolutely. Great job.
I know Jay's been super busy the past couple of days, sending out emails and drawing up documents and things like that. None of us would be here if it weren't for him.
Oh, there's a question. Yes.
You guys mentioned and advocated for. Everyone seemed to mention and advocate for trying new things and kind of expanding your horizons. So I'm curious to know, what's the last thing you did for the first time?
That's a great question.
Aside from the inaugural TMI Hub Makerspace event.
That's a great question. I feel like I'm stumped.
I could jump in and say,
Yeah, go ahead.
I said yes to an opportunity, which is a volunteer opportunity working for an organization. And we provide mentorship to high school students that are in IT and the technology space. While I don't have any experience in IT, I was able to leverage my network and get folks that do have the expertise to actually talk to high school students. It's not something I've done, but it's very rewarding and fulfilling. So that's something I've done for the first time. So that's what I'd like to share with you.
I love that. And it sounds like, and what's your name?
Jack.
Jack. So I think Jack has given us all a challenge panel. We've got to do something for the first time very soon. So thank you for that. Other folks, any other questions?
Every second, you have new technology that you're probably doing you probably do new technology every single day, right? I mean, that's for the
Probably.
first time.
Yeah.
I mean, not a day goes by where I'm saying, drat, it's a new thing I have to learn. I'm sure you all have to do that, right?
I'm sure. There's a question over there.
Yeah, so I have a personal question. Today I was just going through a podcast, and one sentence that hit me was specialization is for insects and not for humans. And you were also mentioning a statement saying throw everything to the wall and then see what sticks to it. So what is the take of you guys? Do we have to channelize deep into one specific field? Because MOT, we have a lot of options, and actually it's confusing me right now.
Yeah, I think just like I think Stephanie was saying, that, or maybe it was you, learning all of the intricacies of, let's just say, Python. And if you were like the Python person, well, how long is it until Python gets replaced? And by going super deep in one specific specialty, you run the risk of being made obsolete when something like ChatGPT gets released. And all of a sudden, anyone can be a coder. And so one of the things that I was going to mention about saying yes to things, as Stephanie was saying, was that you'll figure out what you need to figure out. And so as you're looking at job descriptions, and there's statistically speaking, a lot of men will look at a job description and go, I can figure out half of that. And a lot of women will look at job description and say, I don't meet every single one of this criteria, so I'm not going to apply. And in those cases, it's the folks who say, I can figure that out, who bring that level of scrappiness to those roles. And they're able to not only A, figure it out, but B, bring different types of perspectives there. And so encourage you to take up that mindset of, I can figure that out. And I would say that's what a lot of your education is here. It's not necessarily to learn the one thing that your degree is in. It's to learn how to figure out how to do everything else adjacent to it.
Yeah.
And so I think in the area of specialization, yeah, pick something you like, pick something you enjoy, learn everything there is to learn about that makes you feel fulfilled as a student, as a lifelong learner. But definitely pay attention to your own ability and nurture your own ability to figure out everything else that's adjacent to it, because that's really what's going to help you grow in your career.
Yeah, and I would say take advantage of internships as well to be able to discern what you might like. I wish we had time for one more question. Do we? Yeah, okay, this will have to be the last question. Yes,
I want to rebut that a little bit,
you want to rebut?
the generalization.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually very pro specialist.
I didn't say don't be. I'm not saying you're special.
Oh, so like in my college experience, I did very much like try everything. Like I got like 2 degrees, 3 majors, a minor, like did everything like that. And then I went out to the workforce and I realized that like it would have really been helpful if I had a lot more like deep experience with something specifically. And you bring up like Python there. Like how long is Python going to be useful? Well, like for a lot of the programming languages, they're useful for like 3 decades. And then like for Python, I mean, it generally had pretty poor performance, and now it's sort of an upgraded with Mojo so that it works at like an operating system speed as well. Like for the startup that I work at as well, like, you can have some broad experience with like web development, and there are a lot of abstractions like Supa-based that make it like really easy to spin up a lot of technologies. But at the end of the day, like once you start to deal with scale in any capacity, like having your 10x engineer who knows like how to optimize everything is fantastic. For really, really small teams, like having generalists, I think is fantastic. I don't think that is like generally the best strategy for most people though. And a lot of organizations benefit from having specialists who just work really well with other people.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, and I think the goal for a comment like that is really how do you discern what's best for you, right? And so I think your experience was really valid, that you realized that you wish you had gone a little deeper. And I think that's where I really encourage a lot of students to take advantage of internships, right? Because that's a place where you can get experience while you're in school that then makes you more competitive potentially on the job as well. but I appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to share with you all. Oh,
I have a point of view on his question. So there is this research done by McKinsey about T-shaped professionals, I-shaped professionals. I-shapes are specialists. You want to aim for a T. So if you visualize a T, the stem of the T represents the discipline you want to specialize in, and the head of the T represents your ability to scale that knowledge across multiple things. So you might get a degree in IT and understand systems, and then you scale that across industries, right? Even for web development, for that matter, you can learn one language and then you can figure out how that applies to other things. But to your point, I agree that generalists only work to a certain degree, but I guess it's important to pick a discipline that's cross-functional enough, that cuts across many verticals, so that it makes you more marketable across many markets and industries.
and I love this. Let's keep the discourse going while we network and connect with each other. Thank you again, and thank you, Jay and the team. You guys did a great job. Thanks. Have a great night, everybody.
So just quickly, I will request all the panelists as well as all our technology members, partners to come ahead and we can click a picture together with the entire TMI Hub team, Rebecca and Professor Jabril.
And in fact, we as well have technologists, and Lauren, and everybody, I guess.
Dr. and please stay put. We'll grab a picture with you as well.
Okay, will do.
I would love to use programs. I've been organization process. I published my part. I published website, YouTube, started about what you're doing. Exactly what you're talking about. We nonprofits stable get free information. Cool, that'd be great. Thanks. I think you have some good ideas.
You can also join us, please.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you have. Great life. Everyone.
Hey, Noreen, I didn't see that you were there. I was saying hi to Noreen Wiseau.
All right.
I am, yeah. I imagine
Thank you so much to all our panelists, technology partners, and our panel moderator. Thank you very much. There are a few snacks in the back if you guys still want to grab something. And yeah, we are open for networking and the team will just wrap up everything. Thanks.
Great. Good night, everyone.
We should, I know, I'll definitely be posting on like the video, these like things happen again. So, they might do the same thing. Good to meet you, man. Weird. You know.